Hey guys, welcome to today's online income stream. So grateful that you're here. As you are joining us, please let us know in the chat where you're coming in from. I'm just really grateful for our time together. This is the third STC online income stream. The first one went really well. The second one was the first 10 minutes were a little bit rough. So in terms of apparently my microphone wasn't on. But I figure you live and learn with all of these things. So, um, again, welcome. And as you guys are coming in, it's so good to see you. Today's today's question is a question that we received, and I think it's a question that many of us have, which is how do I get my podcast seen? I think many of us are launching podcasts. I've had my own podcast since 2015, and I've learned a ton of stuff along the way, and it's truly been just a pretty amazing journey. Uh, and I think when I first read that question, I thought of it on multiple levels. One of the things that I wanted to share. First of all, I wanted to share just a couple of things with you. So, the very first tip that I would share in terms of getting your podcast seen is just be you. I know that that may sound like a really silly answer, but when I first started my own podcast, I felt like I had all of this pressure and I really didn't know what I was doing. And so one of the things that I tried to do was I listened to a bunch of podcasts with some of my most favorite people. And I tried to just basically emulate them in terms of format and even music and how things were presented and all of those things. And to be completely honest, it took me about, I would say, 40 to 50 episodes just to even get a little bit of a bearing and to feel more comfortable with that format. So I would just say, and it's really hard at the beginning when you first start a podcast because you don't know what you're doing, right? And so I would just say, stay true to who you are, and I think just having that will be like a huge benefit for you. The other thing I would share is I actually, what I did was I created this little video. So hopefully the tech works here. Let me know in the chat if you guys can see the tech, see me, all of those different things. And what I did was I created this quick video for you, and just to show you some of the more technical stuff in terms of how to get your podcast feed. But don't worry, it's not anything like too complicated. So I'll switch over to that and then show you guys real quick. Here we go. Hey guys, it's me. Hope you're having a great day. So, I just wanted to give you some additional tips in order to help your podcast to get seen. So, looking at my screen right now, and I pulled up a couple of different things. So, the very first thing is as a podcaster, you want to have a podcast host, right? A place where you're storing all of your episodes. So I use Libsyn, and within Libsyn, you want to go into a couple of sections and make sure that it's filled out correctly. So first you want to go to settings, and then you want to go to edit show settings. And then you want to make sure this section is, the show description section is correct. The show title has so all of these are keywords that you can rank for. So you don't want to keyword stuff or anything. So put a bunch of words in there to try to rank for a bunch of stuff, but you want to do those authentically. But you want to make sure all of these different sections are filled out. And then what I sometimes do is I go and play with these categories. So you can put your podcast in all sorts of different categories. Just make sure it's relevant to what you're going for. And then there's also this section right here called tags keywords. So you can actually type in different keywords and stuff like that and just separate them by a comma. That helps as well. The next thing I want to show you is within your content. So let's say you publish a new episode. If you take this one little extra steps, it really helps. So let's say you publish an episode. You want to go to more, and then you want to hit edit. And then you want to go right here into this section. So this is a conversation I had with Dr. Melissa Hall. And we were talking all about websites and, what is website SEO and why is it important? And so you want to go right here into details, and you want to make sure this description is filled out as well. So just needs to be kind of this quick paragraph or two, just a couple of sentences about what that episode is about. So now Google is doing a way better job than it has in past years. They're really advancing on this. But if you actually look, you can actually pull up. Let me see if I can just do it real quick. But podcasts actually show up now in Google search results. So you see this, for example. And so this is like super exciting, but you also want to put those other keywords as well to make sure that it's ranking. The next thing to do is if you have an online community, this really helps if you're like the creator of an online community like a Facebook group. But if you go into this group insights tab, it's on the left-hand side. It can give you an idea of like what the most popular conversations are happening in your community, and it can give you ideas for your podcast episodes. The next thing I always do is I look over at Google Trends. And so this is basically all across the things that across the Google search engine, what people are searching for. So they have like real-time trends, daily trends, what's trending in the past month, all of those kind of things. And then the final thing, what I do is I actually go on YouTube, and you might be like, it's a podcast, Mel. Why would you go on YouTube? So it gives me ideas for potential topics for podcasts. And, since I'm starting this YouTube channel and learning kind of from the ground up, it gives me ideas for potential topics as well. Now, I'm not copying like what they're exactly doing. I'm putting all of my personal perspective and experience and personality and all of those things into it. But so let's say Pat Flynn is somebody that I really respect. I follow a lot of his stuff. I really value like his integrity and the way that he does things. So he has a ton of videos. And so if you just go to home and then videos, and then you can sort by the most popular. And so this can give you an idea of like potentially where to start in terms of episodes, right? So that can kind of help you get started. And then if you want to be really cool, you can repurpose some of that into like your podcast stuff, right into videos. Hope that helps and gives you some new ideas. Bye. All right, guys. I hope that video was I hope that that video was super helpful and just kind of gives you some new ideas of how to have your podcast seen. So again, just to a couple of things, as you have questions on that or just anything related to creating online income, things that have worked for me, please feel free to share them in the question section. But again, just to reinforce a couple of things. So in order to get your podcast seen, I think there's a couple of things. One is just making sure that you stay true to who you are versus trying to imitate and be someone else. I felt like it was really after episode 50 where I found my bearing a little bit more. And I think doing that and just me being like my funny, quirky, slightly nerdy, actually more than slightly nerdy self was when, the podcast started to really take off, because people like you have to remember with podcasts or anything, even like live streaming, right? Like people remember people and people remember personalities, right? So they're not just here just to consume information. So they want to know you, they want to get to know you, and all of those different things. And then the other kind of tech stuff around, make sure that whatever whatever hosting service that you're using. So I use Libsyn, as I alluded to, but there's a bunch of really good podcast hosts out there as well. Buzzsprout is another one, and just make sure that you tag properly, because again, the reality is podcasts are audio. So we need to put words into those podcast episodes in order to get found by search engines. And the really interesting thing is like iTunes itself is a search engine. I forgot what the exact stats are, but there are like, I believe, several million searches every month just on iTunes. So people are searching for all sorts of different stuff. So, and again, as you guys have questions, please feel free to pop it in, and I will definitely answer them, because we've got a little Q&A blitz that will roll into there. And then the thing I would also do is look at people that you follow again, and that you're impacted by. And again, don't copy their content, because again, you want to be who you are. But I think it can give you an insight into what people are doing, and then definitely utilize like Google Trends and things like that. As I was, like a lot of, I was talking to several of our colleagues, and recently they were creating a lot of like podcast episodes. I have a community called Healthcasters, which is for helpers and healers who podcast. And so a lot of our colleagues were creating content around the COVID epidemic. And so really conversations around mental health and the COVID epidemic and things that can be done. And so as you can imagine, like, if you look on Google, right, COVID is really trending. And so that's just some ideas to both serve people and help, and then also to get seen. So, all right, looks like let me know if you guys again have questions. I'm here for you for the next half hour or so, but looks like we might be questioned out, or I taught really well, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, no, I think generally, even I think about this, like I was talking with my partner this morning, and and she was sharing, I was sharing with her like how nervous I feel about even doing this live stream, because it's like it's so out of my element. There's a lot of tech stuff that you have to consider with live streaming, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this stuff gonna break. And so and I think podcasting is similar to that. Like there is some tech stuff that you have to get used to, and really you have to get through 25, 30, 40, 50 episodes in order to get your feet wet and feel like you're confident. But if you can get through that, then I think there's some amazing stuff that can happen on the other side. So cool. And you guys, thank you, Lisa. So it looks like we may not have any questions, which is perfectly okay. So, and let me just make sure also one other thing, because I know sometimes there can be things. So, but Carly, Lisa, good to see you guys. And if you guys are watching, I know there's several folks watching the live stream, so just feel free to type a comment in and let me know where you're coming in from and how you're joining us. And if there's no questions, we can definitely wrap up a little bit early. And so what I wanted to wrap up with was a tool and a quote of the week. So the tool that I would recommend, let me just pull this up right here. I alluded to this earlier, so it's Libsyn. And so Libsyn is basically the easiest way to explain it is when you have a podcast, you don't want to have your audio files stored on your website, because those files can take up a lot of data. They can take up a lot of data and really slow your website down. So instead, what you want to do is you want to actually have this on a on some sort of a podcast hosting service. So Libsyn's like a common one. Buzzsprout is a common one. Podcasting, as you can imagine, is getting quite popular. So there are a number of really good options. I'm most familiar with Libsyn because it's what I've used since 2015. And one of the reasons that I really also like Libsyn is because they generally, I think they're the podcast host that's been around the longest. And so because of that, they get access to, for example, before Spotify made podcasts mainstream onto their channels, Libsyn had a contract with them. So essentially, if you had a podcast on Libsyn, then you could send it over to Spotify as sort of a beta tester. So, and so, yeah, Libsyn is definitely what I recommend. And depending on what you need. So I think I have this is one of the few recurring costs with podcast hosting, but this is what I use. And you just need the lowest tier pricing. If you use selling the Lisa says she uses Libsyn as well. That's awesome, Lisa. And yeah, I've loved it. I can't complain at all about it. So, and there's a couple of really good questions, which I'll definitely answer them. So Dee says, I can talk to people every day, but talking into a live... Oh, there's some tech issues here. Let me close that out real quick. I'll just read Dee Dee's. I can talk to people all day, but talking into a live without another being makes it harder for me. It slows my speech. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I feel like with podcasting, the learning curve was a little bit easier than live streaming because of that very fact. And so I, yeah, I hear you. So, Lisa had a really good question. Let me see if, let me try to narrow this and get this smaller because apparently the tech is not working. But so I'll just read it out because it seems like the quote card decided to blow up really big. Um, so Lisa's question is, when you first started, when did you see the biggest shift in downloads? So to be completely honest, Lisa, I think for me, it was, I think when I first started, I felt like, okay, I'm going to start this podcast and then suddenly I'm going to hit this huge like download where it's going to go from like 100 some downloads to like tens of thousands for me personally. And when I've just even talked to like our colleagues at podcasts that have done this for a couple of years, a lot of them say it's been a lot of like incremental growth. Let me show you guys. Let me see if I can actually just pull up my Libsyn for just the sake of full transparency here. I'm pulling this up right now. I don't know how big this will let me stretch out, but these stats. Okay, so this is inside of my Libsyn, and as you can tell, we're quickly approaching 1 million downloads, which is pretty wild and crazy. And so, yeah, so even like my downloads, like I know that, the very first month I ever did, I'm trying to figure out the best way to filter this. I think the best thing might be actually to show you that first screen I was at. But for me, like it was very incremental growth. So this is the thing I'm looking at right here. This stat right here. So even if you pull this out, like I know for the first like several months, I averaged I think around 2 to 3,000 downloads a month, and then it's been steadily increasing. I think that the key thing with podcasting is that you have to be consistent. So it doesn't mean you have to podcast every week of the year or something like that, because it's frankly it's just unrealistic, right? Like, and I think self-care is really important. Like you don't want to burn out of podcasting. So what I basically do is I take some months off, but but on those episodes or on those months that I'm consistently releasing episodes every single week. And so the key thing with podcasting you have to also remember, right, is when you have like 50 or 75 episodes, people are also listening to your back episodes. So that's also helping download numbers as well. And so mine right now, so you can tell, like I'm right around 21,000 to 22,000 downloads a month. And it's been, and actually for a lot of last year was around like 18 to 19,000. So it's just kind of been more like this, like a consistent thing more than like a straight up thing. So I hope that helps. And I would say the biggest thing is just having that fortitude just to keep going. So um, Lisa says incremental growth makes sense. And hey, Som, so good to see you. Carlotta had a really good question. So still developing my ideas, the best ways to test out ideas. Carlotta, I think you're meeting for your podcast, right? So I would say some of the best ways to test out ideas. One is if you have done the research, like I know you're in healthcasters, so if you've done some of that research and like this is a topic that's viable, the very first thing I would do is just put it out there, because the reality is we can spend a lot of time researching and trying to get data, but until we put it out there, we just don't know how it's going to do, right? So if you have a general idea for your topic, if you put those episodes out there. The other kind of practical thing, if you're not at a point, you're listening and you're not at a point where you're quite ready to even start a podcast, but you're still in that research phase, what I would do is I would do a couple of different things. So check, for example, on iTunes and check what existing podcasts are out there. See how many episodes they've published, see how long they've been publishing. All of those things can give you data in terms of whether it's a viable topic, right? So, for example, if someone's been publishing for a couple of years, that's a pretty good indicator that there's a lot to talk about there, and they're at least getting a decent number of downloads that they're keeping it going, right? The other thing to also do is like check out things, other social media platforms like YouTube, so look at some of your favorite YouTube channels, figure out what they're talking about, what those topics are, and then if there's like a lot of viable YouTube channels, for example, I think it's a potential idea. I mean, it's a potential area that you could podcast on as well. Now, one of the things that I'm thinking a lot about with STC is I haven't quite found the courage yet. So, and then practically, I still got to figure out some of the tech stuff around this. But one of the things I've been thinking a lot with STC is potentially even doing like video podcasts. So, for example, that I would actually record the video conversation and then also do the audio as well. So, like I've been doing, but then use that video in different ways. For example, like put it on a YouTube or our YouTube channel. So that way I'm kind of repurposing and thinking about content as well. You're so welcome. So yeah, I that's the biggest tips that I would share. And so Libsyn's the tool, and then if you guys don't have any other questions, we can definitely wrap up a little bit early with our quote of the week. And I try to pull something that I thought was like really resonated with that question of how do I get my podcast seen? And this was a quote that I heard, and I don't know who I can actually attribute it to, but the quote is, "You don't have to get it right, just get it going. You don't have to get it right, just get it going." And I think this has been so true for me with podcasting because, the reality is I had no idea what I was doing, definitely for the first 10 episodes. I think I started getting a little more comfortable as I started getting better. And then, but now, like, I'm almost 250 episodes in, and it's so funny. Even like I still sometimes make mistakes, but I have a good workflow. And the reality is also that if I didn't start those first episodes and struggle through them and have a bunch of tech hiccups and a bunch of stuff, then there's just no way that I would have ever started, right? And it's the same thing for this live streaming channel. Like, I'm so nervous every morning before we start this, like a fair amount of nausea and then a fair amount of like, why did I do this? But then I get on and I'm just I feel happy and excited, and it's neat to like connect with you guys in this way and to try to figure it out. So and whatever that is, whether it's live streaming, podcasting, having a new niche for your therapy clients, thinking about an online course, whatever it is, the key thing is, and I think for many of us, like, because we're so smart and we're big thinkers, the tendency will always be to keep a lot of those ideas in our heads away from other people. And I think one of the most courageous things that we can all do is to put things out into the world, not just to serve our clients, to serve those who need us, but also for ourselves, because at the end of the day, you don't want to like look back on your life and have a bunch of like, oh, I wish I had done that. And you don't want a bunch of regrets as well. So, Didi said, "I'm so glad you pushed through. We need you. Thank you." Thank you, Didi. That really does mean a lot. So, all right, guys. So we're going to, I guess, wrap up a little bit early. So, so grateful for you. So thank you again for joining the live stream, and I will see you next time. Bye.